My choir, which of course is not meeting, is definitely YouTube channeling, and we have this big event every Monday night when we would have had choir, and it's really quite amazing, actually.
Let me just say that it is Wednesday. Oh, that now it's hold on. When now I can hear it. How do I do this? Okay, there we go. All right, it is Wednesday, June 3rd, 2020. We are at the crumbling edges of our democracy. And we are going to do dialogue, which is something that we can always have more of in narrative as in life. So, hi, Cheryl. I see Jennifer and Francis and Aline and Catherine and Felicia and Angie.
I'd like to see Felicia, but not quite.
And Bridget. Welcome, welcome. Hello. Let's do this. This is fun. In the chat, check in via a line of dialogue and a contrasting action. So, for example, it might be, "I'm so glad to be here," she said, frowning, or "I can't wait to write," she said, yawning, or let's do "It's been a hard week," she said, smiling. Okay, you get the idea. Yours can be much more interesting and complex, and it's your check-in via line of dialogue and contrasting, and it can be a gesture or an action or an expression, something physical that we can see, just for fun. I know it's good. It's like 2 days old. But I will if you want.
That's for you. I'm giving you.
Okay, now let's just read these aloud. Francis.
You want me to read?
Well, yours, please.
I was so happy. I was happy to hear from Obama today. My eyes teared up.
Yeah, nice. Aline.
"Of course I don't want to be here," she said, as she pushed open the door and made a grand entrance.
Catherine.
"It's been good to see you," she said, shaking her head.
Nice. All right, Cheryl.
"I love to cook on days like this," she said angrily.
Yeah, a little hot here, huh? Bridget. Oh, let's unmute you. Will you unmute you, please? All right, that seemed to work. Are you there, Bridget?
Me.
Oh,
Okay.
yes, please.
Where am I? Let's see. Let's see, what did I write? "Hard time zooming in tonight," she said, sighing.
Yes. So if you're just arriving, we are doing a check-in via a line of dialogue and a contrasting gesture or action or expression. There is no wrong way to do this, but here I'll give you. So everybody, when you come in, you can't see the that was Francis's. I just put Francis's in at the bottom there. You can't see the chat that came before you were here, so that's why I keep typing in the same thing. All right, while we're waiting, some of the one of the things we're going to talk about and I am now on, I have the, I've taken one of my kids' headsets here so that I can have a little bit of a classroom feel in the midst of all the craziness. But one of the things we're going to be talking about is that dialogue really isn't just the words people say to each other. It is also the body language. In fact, we had a doctor's appointment via video today. And she said in the beginning of all this, it was just the telephone. And she said, it's almost impossible to really deal with somebody medically just via voice. That so much is body language and all of that. So, well, this makes sense, right? We when we are listening to people's words, we are trying to figure out what they really mean via their facial expressions and their actions and what, the gestures and all of that. What else might be included in dialogue? When you think of people talking to each other, what else in a book?
Well, the beats.
Right. We talk a lot about beats, which in acting. So in acting, when you analyze a monologue or a script, you're looking for the strategies that the character is taking, right? So first I'm going to praise you, and then I'm going to fling an insult at you, and then I'm going to cajole you, and then I'm going to apologize, and then I'm going to stomp off. Oh wait, we've left words behind altogether. But these are all the different beats of an effort to get what we want. Not that I would do that, but some people. Oh, here we go. Jennifer, why do you want to, Jennifer, will you unmute and read yours?
I'm so happy to hear from you, she said with a fixed smile.
I like the word fixed there. Yeah, great. All right, what else? What else is dialogue? What else is part of dialogue besides the words people say?
Where they are, where they're having the conversation, I think is important.
And especially, if we get the point of view, if we get inside a character's head, if we're getting the place through one of the characters, well, first of all, we'll see both of them interacting with the place and with the objects and the props and things, and that will all be part of it. But also, if we have a point of view character, we'll see what that person is noticing and how it seems to them in that moment, right? So, so that, something could seem, in a dark moment, something seems ugly or upsetting, cluttered or whatever, and in a happy moment it might seem effusive and full of life or whatever, right? So definitely how the place is perceived will give us part of, I think, another significant element, which is just the interiority, what the character is thinking, right? And very often we could do the same exercise with thought, right? A line of dialogue and a contrasting thought inside the head of the character, right? So we do not always say exactly what we think, for good reason, right? So yeah, so we're going to look at lots of elements of dialogue. Funnily enough, after I do that little introductory piece, it turns out that my first example is almost entirely just spoken words. One of my favorite quotes about dialogue is Elizabeth Bowen says, "Speech is what people do to each other." So speech as action. This is a mother speaking to her daughter in the memoir Heartberries. "Men will never love you," she said once. "They'll use you up. And when you're bone dry and it's your time to write, you'll be alone without a goddamn typewriter to your name." So a few things here. First of all, so I love actually, she said once. I think sometimes it's easy to sort of make generalizations about kind of perspectives or kind of strong, memorable lines like, oh, she would always say, or she often said. And there's certainly those ticks and lines and things that people repeat often, but there are also those words that are so searing. We hear them once and we never forget them. So one thing you might want to play with here, and actually let's go ahead and just put this exercise into the chat as well. Just a line that is that kind of line that is so memorable. She said this once, kind of, and the underlying is, I never forgot it. The other thing here is that we have this character that is speaking in generalizations, like men will never love you. I mean, the you is starting to get very focused, right? But the whole thing is clearly, specifically saying something to the daughter and about life, right? Like teaching her something, shaping her sense of what is possible. And then the specificity of without a goddamn typewriter to your name is sort of great too, right? So see if you can just like come up with one of those lines that is like, again, searing, or it could be uplifting. We don't have to go with, it doesn't have to be negative, but, and it embodies this character's belief about the world, right? What is the world like? But it's kind of aimed at the listener, isn't it? It's almost, in that sense of speech is what people do to each other. Before we start, and I will shut up for a few minutes and let you write, but Felicia, will you unmute and read us yours?
Oh, she punched stuffing into the cavity of a raw chicken, paused to sling a glob of the greasy mass into the sink. Of course, I love you.
Fabulous. Wonderfully vivid details with the punching and the slinging and the glob. And yeah, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So, all right. So we're going to just do exercise 1 as like one punch line. And you can go ahead and put it in the chat. And so what I'm going to do now is be quiet for like 5 minutes. Couple more minutes. Okay, let's just run down these as well. Francis.
Trying to find it.
Yeah, I have to scroll up a bit.
Oh, I look for Francis and it says me.
Oh, who's that?
What do you mean you just want to be happy? Her father growled. No one gets to just be happy.
Nice. Yeah, that sort of sense of this is how life is, and the way it can get aimed at, especially I think by parents to kids we can sort of aim at things at them. Yes. Great. Cheryl, will you unmute and read?
Did you want me to come up for coffee or something? He said, a lazy smile wobbling around his mouth. Not a chance, I said.
I love wobbling. The verb for the smile is like a lazy smile wobbling. It gives us so much character for that guy, and then I love her comeback. It's great. Catherine, will you please unmute and read? Oh, please unmute. I can't, it's not letting me unmute you. Thank you.
That's okay. All right. You're rough, you're coarse, you're ignorant too, Mrs. Whitehead said to Linda, wriggling her nose upwards in disgust. The only way you think you'd get ahead in life is by peddling your arse, and there isn't very much there either.
It's brutal, but there's a little humor in that critique coming along with it. Yeah, great. And the wiggling her nose upward in disgust is a great gesture. And again, just what a punch, right? Yeah. All right, Aline.
I apologize for the gaps. I think it's because I had paragraphs going on. Anyway, I thought I'd never forgive you. Reva spoke in a flat tone, as if she were a professor droning on at a lecture. Gerhard gaped, his scar twitched. Just because I rescued you from the Gestapo, you're going to forgive me? It's not that, although I'm grateful. God knows I'm grateful. It's because it's not your fault. It's no one's fault. In some ways, it's not even Hitler's fault. It's everyone's fault. We let it happen.
Where's that coming from, Aline? That's great. So, and I love that I thought I'd never forgive you, that it's sort of this droning, right? This flatness to it, which is really intriguing when we have these kind of, these juxtapositions. Yeah. And I like the rhythm of her final talk, and then his scar twitched is a nice action too. Great. All right, Jennifer.
You're moving in with him now? Okay, just one thing. Always make sure you have enough money in your pocket to get yourself home.
Great. And you hear all those beats, right? It's like you're moving in with him is one beat, and then it escalates with now, and then it backs off with okay, and then it goes kind of, like sort of equivocates with just one thing, and then it kind of drives forward again. So those, and you can see with each of those, the speaker is, even if she's, I would imagine her speaking it at the same pace that you read it, but each one is trying like a slightly different tact, right? Yeah, great. Bridget.
Okay. My daughters will marry men, she said to the attorney drawing up her will, who noted that she had made provision only for her sons. I believe you have 2 daughters? Well, that's one definition of success. The elder daughter thought many years later, an old woman writing in craft class.
Wow, nice. Yeah. There's a whole like layers of scenes and generations, right? This is a saga. Yeah, it's great. All right, Felicia.
Brain tumor. Just this once, could you please not hijack an argument with your problem?
I love that too. Again, it's like I just love the juxtaposition of like brain tumor with your like hijacking an argument with your problems. It makes me want to read more of the scene. Yeah, wonderful.
Horrible. Thanks.
Eleanor, do you have one?
I do.
Did you put it in the
Did
chat?
did I not send it? Wait, it's in the chat.
You might have to hit enter.
Oh, that would be helpful, wouldn't it?
There it is.
Oh, you got that too. Good.
She sputtered and stared at him. What is up with you? Then she turned on her heel and went into the kitchen, her back blocking the doorway. The last thing she wanted for him to answer truthfully.
Great. I love that. I love the gesture and the back blocking the doorway. I love the movement from you to what, and the sputtering, and then finally like getting out what is up for you. And then that last line is great, right? It's so human. that we're not always after the truth, the answer. Yeah, great. All right, good. Now that was the short part. Now we're going to move into some longer passages of dialogue. And the first is from Writers and Lovers by Lily King. Has anyone read this? It's a pandemic release. Yeah? Yeah, it's good.
Not the book.
Oh, not the book? Oh, just the passage. Okay. I marked kind of some of the things that are happening here, just as kind of a reminder when you dive into your own to play with all these different kinds of approaches. So the first is indirect dialogue, which is to say it's a summary. It's not the actual sort of moment by moment words that are spoken, but it summarizes what they talk about. And it's very specific and kind of quirky, almost in the sense of a list, so that we get a really strong sense of this conversation, but it just takes a sentence. Whereas if we were to actually live through the conversation with the characters, it would take pages. And then you'll see we move into action, we move into direct dialogue, and we move into, we see some of the beats play out in action specifically that are, and I think very, very kind of particular actions that we don't see all the time in writing, but feel very human and connect us to the emotion of these characters. This is a woman in her early 30s who is talking to the young son of a man she's dating, and the man she's dating is a widower, and this is and so the children are orphaned. The young woman has also lost her own mother about 6 months before this, and a lot of the book is sort of about her dealing with that loss. So, and almost everybody she connects with during this time is also dealing with some kind of big loss. So she's babysitting for these kids. We talk about popsicles and our favorite flavors and all the places he's swum in his life, and a rock John, his brother, jumped off of somewhere in a place that began with an M, where there were kittens under a porch. And I just love that because it's so, it gives us, how especially kids, sort of how they think and how they remember. And so again, without going through all the beats of that dialogue, we get, a lot of the flavor of it and the building relationship. He's taken my hand and holds it like a map, with two hands in front of his face, spreading out the fingers, then pushing them together. We did metaphor earlier in the term, and like a map is perfect here, because in a way she's trying to help him, guide him along in this sort of shared journey of motherlessness that they're both on. But it also is, of course, a vivid literal gesture, the way he's playing with her fingers. I don't remember my mama, he says. You were only 2, right? I can't bear to say when she died. Uh-huh. I don't know if she was like you or completely different. If she was like Aunt Sue or completely different. Who was she like? She was probably like you. Me. She was probably curious and smart and silly in the best way. He brings my fingers up to his mouth and bounces them absently against his lips. When my mother died, I sort of felt her inside me sometimes, I say, like I'd swallowed her. He laughs. Swallowed her. I still have moments when I feel that, when it feels like she's inside me and there's no difference between us, or that the difference doesn't matter. He's listening, bouncing my fingers still. He doesn't say anything. I think it is all that love. All that love has to go somewhere. He gnaws a little on my pinky. He nods slowly. I think she loved me, he whispers to my knuckles. She did, I say, and still does, very, very much. And that love will always, always be inside you. So a couple of things. One is the laughter, the beat of laughter, I think is really wonderful here and really human. It's not what we think about when we think about death, but it is definitely, I think, what we experience when we experience death, right? That life goes on and that we need all of our strategies and all of our humor to make it through. And then the gestures, right? Just the fingers to the mouth and bouncing them and gnawing on a little on my pinky, and then and whispering to my knuckles, right? These very powerful gestures. And then this decision that she makes, she doesn't know the mother, right? She makes a decision to answer with absolute authority, and to say something to him that maybe she also needs to hear and needs to remember, right? So it's a beautiful scene. So one of the things you might want to play with is having two characters in very different sort of life moments, but having a shared need and how they talk to and sort of tend each other in that moment. See if you can play around with indirect dialogue versus direct, like that list. But popsicles, favorite flowers, all those items on that list again give us a lot in a very compacted way. You can pull in metaphor again if you want, moving into direct dialogue and using action sometimes instead of words, right? Sometimes people don't say something, they do something. So so just a really rich example. A lot of this can, of course, happen in editing as well. So just get on the page and see what happens when you put two people in conversation. Okay, and we're going to do 12 minutes. So enjoy. Couple more minutes. Okay. By the way, Julia is marching in San Francisco and she may join us if she gets back. But anyway, let's hear some dialogue. Who would like to read? Remember, it's really good for you. It's like you're rolling back up, you're shaking it out, you're seeing what's there, and then you go back and write more. Catherine, will you unmute yourself and read?
Read.
Oh, there you go.
Okay. Jackie popped by to see Bruce the evening he was released from the hospital. She brought fish tacos and guava juice, enough for the two of them. As they finished, Bruce looked sideways at her and said, "You have no parents either. Is that right?" Jackie nodded, but didn't say anything. It happened so rarely that anyone mentioned them. She said, "Yes, they were both killed in an auto accident when I was 10. Do you miss them?" He looked searchingly at her face. "At first, yes, but now I'm growing more independent. I don't remember my father or my mother, but sometimes I do when I look through Grandma's photo albums." "Her photo albums? You remember I told the bomb shelter people the night I introduced myself that I felt I knew my dad when he was at his best before the heroin." Bruce looked out the window for a moment and seemed far away. Jackie reached up and turned his face toward her gently. When their eyes met, he laughed nervously. "When you talk about your family, you sound nervous, almost guilty-like." He shrugged his shoulders. "I have no memory of illness, death, funerals, nothing. I just wonder if I ever had parents. They've left no markers behind. I just have this, what will I call it? A nebulous feeling that fills my chest with longing, loving, yearning to reach out and touch a nebulous somebody." He bent his body forward, letting his head drop between his knees, and was silent for several minutes. Jackie touched his right shoulder lightly and said, "If you don't mind, could we look at some of the pictures together? Maybe you'll notice something familiar to connect with.
Catherine, did you write all this right now?
No, I wrote it a little bit before class and then I finished it now.
Okay, well, we better stop because that's about as much as I can hold in my head.
I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. It's a beautiful scene. I love, even the specificity of what she brings, the fish tacos and the guava juice gives us so much. And then, he looks sideways at her and that, that people, it happens so rarely that people mention her parents, right? So they're treading into this very intimate territory. And then, when he looks out the window, when he's struggling, it's just struggling to describe, or is it she, the nebulous feeling, the nebulous somebody, the repetition of that word nebulous and just that struggle to put something into words, which I think is a really important part of dialogue, right? Is that we don't always know how to say something, and especially if we're trying to say it when we haven't before. So I think that's very moving, beautiful, beautiful scene. Thank you. All right, who's next? All right, Francis. I was able to unmute you. It's a miracle.
Oh, okay. Our incompatible little group is eating dinner in the stern of the boat, pretending to get along. It is finally cooling off. The sky goes red. A dolphin leaps. This could be paradise. We should try to keep the apples away from the bananas, she says. Getting the fruit to last all week is a constant problem while the boat sails transects far out at sea, listening for whales. The apples give off ethylene that signals the bananas to ripen, she says. Our Captain Bligh, all 6'5" of well-tanned muscle, tips his big head towards her across the table. How can ethylene signal anything? He's an arrogant electronics engineer from Santa Barbara with a big know-it-all complex. Ethylene is only 2 carbons connected to 2 hydrogens. It's not worth arguing with him, and if she argues, that's what it will be. They all rely on Captain Bligh to get them safely back to port. So she swallows her answer, keeps it to herself. The answer was, just like nitrous oxide, 1 nitrogen hitched to 1 oxygen raises all the pricks in the world, as his has been doing its duty every night up there on the pile of sails on the bow with their attractive lady scientist who leads the study.
Okay. I love the incompatible little group, right? I mean, right away, we sort of want to be in the scene with with an incompatible little group. And then the sky goes red, a dolphin leaps. I mean, the sort of sense of, and the line, it could be paradise. And then juxtaposed against the dialogue about the apples and the bananas, right? Which is very specific and turns out to open out in very interesting ways, but it's sort of mundane compared to the glory that we've seen and the possibility of paradise. And then, he tips his head forward. So these gestures, and I love the line, how can ethylene signal anything, right? I mean, this is just great dialogue because you're digging into really specific things. And then we have like one character who can't imagine that and one character who knows precisely how and yet won't say anything and we get the stakes because they're depending on him to get them safely there, and so there's no room for an argument here, right? So so I love that. I love how much gets played out in these really quirky details. Yeah, great.
Thank you.
All right, who's next? Bridget. Will you unmute, please? It was only occasionally lets me do it.
Unmute, yes. Okay, this is totally improvised right now, so we're kind of rocky. Atari dropped.
We're all in this boat, though.
Atari dropped dead. He was jogging in the hills. With Z's shocked voice still in her ears, Bid dialed Vito's number in Texas to tell him. It had been almost 20 years since they'd had contact, but she didn't think twice. Of course he would want to know. The two had been close friends and buddies in graduate school. Both had become Italian historians. You think I care? He exploded in rage when he heard her voice on the phone. You think I want you to call me? It was silence. That woman would not invite me into her house. Why would I care what happens to him? Good riddance to them both. Good riddance to you all. Bid heard the phone slam down. He'd hung up on her. She was stunned at the rage she heard coming at her through the line. And she would only learn many years later, helping his colleagues with an in memoriam piece for him, the cause of his rage, the insult she'd inflicted upon him, a loss of public face.
She the wife of the dead man, or she the woman calling?
She's it was hard to do because it was so it's a scene I really need to write. Okay, let's see,
Who inflicted shame on him? Republican.
Both his colleague's wife and his ex-wife Bid, both Z and Bid.
Yeah.
Shame.
Great. I mean, I love the turn. You know, I love that she's like immediately thinks to call him. And I think you could even slow down a beat there, because this is like, you know, it's sort of a, you know, it's like one of those moments of like, oh, this huge life thing has happened, and maybe they haven't talked in X amount of time, but she knows right away. And then what is she thinking to say to him if she's worried he's going to be upset, or, you know, so have her, you know, you can take a little more time with her going down her path that is going to turn out to be completely wrong, right? Because then you have this wonderful U-turn as he explodes in rage, and kind of a mystery that we then find out later.
Right. It's a huge pivot scene that the outcome of the book is going to be connected with. So it's really hard.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, you've got it. You've got it there, and now you can just go in and open out a little bit that earlier moment. Yeah. All right. One more. Anyone want to? All right, two more. Or we'll go Eleanor. Oh my gosh, everybody. Let's do Eleanor and Jennifer, and then we'll. We don't know. Maybe we'll. All right, go ahead, Eleanor. Oh wait, I think we both managed to unmute you then, but then it was two positives canceling a negative. So if you could do it again, now it won't let me. Eleanor, yeah, you have to unmute. I know you did.
Got it.
There you go. Thank you.
Sorry.
That's okay.
What happens? You cancel each other out, right?
Yes, exactly. We're trying not.
It's my document not pulling up. Come on.
If you have.
Oh, I see why. Never mind.
All right.
Operator error. Here we go. I hadn't seen Julia in many months, but that afternoon we sat at the table and talked like old friends. We talked about selling our houses, the uprooting, what I was writing, the mosaics she was making, how it had been for her settling in at co-housing, what I thought about leaving the suburbs and moving to Oakland. I can't believe you really want to do this, she said, gesturing around the room at the other co-housing wannabes, the tables, the washed concrete floors, the chaos and beauty of everyone gathered elbow to elbow, shoulder to shoulder, so earnest, so warm, so much in competition to become one of the chosen. I'm not sure I do, I said, propping my cheek against my fist, my elbow on the table. I mean, I hesitated. What did I mean? I do, but it scares me, I added, wondering why I was being so honest with her. I'd only spent a few dinners with Julia, a few conversations, but I trusted her. She fiddled with a piece of pita on her bamboo plate, pushing it against a chunk of hummus lazily, as if she didn't care if she really got any on the pita or not. Julia looked like an Etruscan sculpture, spare, lean, chiseled corners, a long, thin face that spoke of hardship beneath a coat of luxury. She looked weathered like the prow of a 19th century ship, one cresting the waves with confidence, not showing the rust on the hull. Her favorite colors were turquoise and gold, and she was wearing a chunky gold bracelet and turquoise capris. I felt plain as toast in my cream-colored sleeveless top and beige skirt, hoop earrings, hair brushed behind my ears. Julia's hair was like an unruly mop, sort of like I always imagined Annie Leibovitz wore her hair. I'm going to give a workshop on mosaic, she said. I think the kids will love it. She glanced around at the children like a benevolent aunt with an adoring look only a woman who never had any children could bestow on those that belonged to someone else.
Did you just write all of that?
I did.
Yeah, that's impressive.
The description I had written in the metaphor, the description of her like an Etruscan sculpture, that paragraph I pulled out of what I had written in the metaphor class.
Okay. Anyway, the summary, I like you started with the summary, you know, of their conversation about mosaics and co-housing and all of that. So I really like that. Again, you know, something like, I mean, they're just these unexpected juxtapositions, which does represent how conversation meanders. I like how our narrator interrupts herself as she's trying to explain herself to kind of question herself, like, why did I, you know? So again, that the way that talking isn't just expressing ourselves, but trying to figure ourselves out and trying to figure out what we think. And then I love the gesture of, like, you know, the way the friend is with the pita, as if she didn't care how much hummus got on the pita. I just like kind of love that and what it says about both characters. And then, yeah, the whole description of her face and the comparison, you know, I felt plain as toast, which kind of gives us a hook into hearing both of them described, right? So we kind of, because it's this comparison. Yeah, great, very lively.
Thank you. This has really made me realize something, which is that dialogue doesn't have to be what's in quotes. Yeah, I've never quite gotten that before in just this way. So thank you for that.
Yay, I'm so happy. All right, Jennifer.
It's Scott. I hate to, the disembodied woman on the phone says, what? He didn't make, what? They called last night. Where is he? He's gone. No. I'm so sorry, she gurgled down the phone line. My ears cannot hear, and they're full of a deep siren sound, so that while she's telling me that he called her 11 last night, having chest pains, got to the curb, she sat with paramedics, a shot, a spray, a slumping. He told her to call. Oh my God, because enough of this has reached my brain. Oh my God, and my hand is frozen around the phone. I'm so sorry. What is your name? You sat with him? Weird, wet, animal-like sounds in my ear. The other hand reaches out to my husband, who has heard the sound in my voice. He stands still in the middle of the room, drying his coffee cup. Not one muscle moves as he stares at me. Okay, I understand, I whisper. And now it is me making wet animal sounds as I hang up the phone.
Beautiful. Guys, if you can do these things in 12 minutes, man, you can write a book in 12 minutes a day. Yeah, so just, I love the staccato rhythms of that kind of opening exchange where they're just trying to sort of comprehend each other and get this information across, and the gurgling of the apology, and then the full deep siren sound, you know, that she hears, like a lot of these very vivid senses of sound that are full of the emotion. And then again, this kind of the fragmented description of what happened, which works really well because it's sort of how it's filtering in, and we start to get that kind of fragmented picture as well. And then the weird wet animal-like sounds in my ear, and then those circling back as what's, you know, now they're you know, so, and the frozen and the husband, and right. So a lot of the physicality that's going to meet news like this. Yeah, beautiful. Okay, let's write another one and then we'll hear from everybody else. And if we have time, we might pair up at the end and read the thing you didn't get to read. So, but we'll see if we have time, because we're doing some long passages today. Okay, so this is from Your House Will Pay, which is a novel by Steph Cha. It is about oh my goodness. So it's about a Korean American family. This scene is between two sisters, Grace and Miriam. And their mother was shot in a drive-by shooting earlier in this day, leading to lots of complicated revelations about the mother's past. But I don't think we've gotten quite there yet. But in any case, Grace was there when her mother was shot, and her mother's in the hospital, still alive. So this is the two sisters talking. Shit, said Grace. She found her phone in her handbag, realized she hadn't checked it in hours. I had a date tonight. I forgot to cancel. Oh, that's right. Miriam kept close tabs on Grace's love life, and Grace had so little going on that she reported whenever she had a date. Her sister and her mother, I should say, haven't been speaking for a couple of years. And so she makes this observation. Her sister and her mother weren't all that different when it came down to it. They both loved her enough to want things for her. It was only the things that were different. You stood up the Korean doctor? Grace read through her messages. There were 8 of them, and the last 5 were long and angry. I stood up the Korean doctor, she said, blinking at the profanity. What? She gave Miriam the phone and watched her scowl. Frickin' inconsiderate cunt? Why frickin'? Grace shrugged and Miriam handed her phone back. God, I think you really, she paused, her lips parted on the next word. You were going to say I dodged a bullet, said Grace. Miriam nodded, a grim smile on her face. Grace sighed. Well, that's 2 in one day. Jesus Christ gracious, Miriam laughed, and it made Grace laugh. So that was still possible in this new world. Which I love, right? Another moment of laughter, which again, I think is, in that discovery. Oh, I can still laugh. We get the line of dialogue, and then she's digging in her handbag and she's realizing that, right. So there's the action and the realization, and then her report. And then we get this very tight backstory. And I think it's just important to see how concisely this can be accomplished. We don't need to open a scene or go on and on about it. Miriam kept a close tab, and Grace, so we just get a little summary of that. And then this little comparison that their mother and sister weren't all that different. They both loved her enough to want things for her. It was only the things that were different, right? So just a deepening of an understanding of what's going on here. And then she says, you stood up the Korean doctor. She reads through a message, so we get action and assessment. There were 8 of them, the last 5 long and angry. And then she says, I stood up the Korean doctor. One of the things you'll see a lot in dialogue is those kind of mirrorings, that people repeat each other. Maybe they repeat a phrase, or maybe they repeat a line, but that happens. It's probably part of the whole kind of human mirroring that we do. And so you get these lines bounced back and forth. And then she says, what? And so instead of answering her, she hands her the phone and watches her scowl. So that's Miriam's expression. And then we get the line that the Korean doctor has written, and she's wondering why he backed off on one term and not on another. And then we get more action, right? Grace shrugged, Miriam handed the phone back. And then she's, God, I think you really, and then she interrupts herself and she, pauses, her lips parted on the next word. So we get that dialogue. She starts down one street, and then through that gesture and seeing her lips parted, we see her stop herself. And then Grace guesses what she was going to say, and they share a kind of a laugh over this. Again, just all of these different elements in a high stakes moment between 2 people who are different, but are also their sisters, right? So they're experiencing the same moment, but they each have different information and different stakes and different relationships to the mother and to each other. So all of that is sort of at play here. And again, we're just seeing action, direct dialogue, little tight backstory, and physical gestures or insight and moments of insight. So lots of just fun stuff to play with. So let's do well, it's 7:17, so let's do 13 minutes. Okay. Let's do 15. We're gonna do 15. Go for it. Couple more minutes. Okay. Let's see. So we have three more people to read, and you can read the thing you wrote, the first, the middle one or this last one, whichever you prefer. Just not both, but let us know if you are reading a different one. But anyway, Cheryl, do you want to unmute yourself and read?
Sure. I'm reading 3.
Great.
The city is burning around us, and the screams of horses and men almost overwhelming. I can see he wants to be off, taking his horse across the causeway, leaving the rest of us behind. Well, his father was a bastard, so I'm not surprised he is too. The sweat is running rivers down his face, over his beard, onto his dented breastplate. He has his foot in the stirrup when he turns to me and says, I leave you in charge, Juan. Finish the fighting and bring the gold to disappoint me. I trust you. I sketch my eyebrow. Take the moment to look back at my Tlaxcalan soldiers. The few of them who understand Spanish smile briefly and look away. A small nod from the leader, Chicotengo. Of course, Jefe. See you in Tacuba, I say. Off he goes, I bravely answer. The sound of flint arrowheads slice the air like fresh meat. The slinger's stone, a few of them fall like hailstones. Small, but I have the gold in my possession now. I am my Tlaxcalans, and as for me, I have nothing to go back to in Spain, and there are many places to hide in the New World.
Great. We lost a little bit with the sound, but just the internet, but it's great. You really captured the sense of place, which I think you talked last time about feeling like this is a sort of a whole era, and just the vivid world here, and the screaming of the horses and the men, and then the voice of, well, his father was a bastard, the dented, the breastplate, the flint arrowheads, the hailstone, and then the character says, I have nothing to in Spain, right? The stakes here for for like going all out. So I love that. I mean, you have such a vivid sense of place, and yet we have such a strong voiced specific character kind of taking us through this place. So fabulous. All righty. Felicia, do you want to unmute and share? Are you there, Felicia?
I'm here.
Hi.
Hi, I'm in bed. Sorry.
Okay.
Did you just call me them? Honey, everything isn't about race, Jonas said, ending his sentence in a dismissive huff of breath. Look at it, she said. I can't see what you see, he said. I suppose not, she said. She fell silent. He breathed shallowly like an asthmatic. Honey, say something. In photos, the murders, and then she's in reverie. In photos, the murderous thing was horrifyingly beautiful, arresting. exquisite in its design, that which had haunted mankind surely as much as love. Dead upon arrival, she'd read, old as mankind, older than that, perhaps. She'd heard one withered under its attention. She'd heard suffering its illuminating abuses was the fastest way to be in communion with oneself. She'd heard it bestowed a lethal benediction, begone shame of the flesh. The pounds melted away. Once captured, you would never embrace your last lover, your mother, niece, uncles, aunts, fathers, cousins again. Breathless as you once were in the arms of your lover, you died begging for air, detained in a hallway where the usual suspects dressed in green scrubs, not police blue, not prison guard drab, had deemed you too old, too black, too fat to live. The unfitting end you'd lived your entire life half expecting granted. At last you'd be found deserving, you whom lovers were aroused to anoint queen, permitted to die staring up at a hospital ceiling designed to dampen sound. I hope I don't get it, she said aloud, realizing this would be the last time she'd ever speak to the man she loved, her Scottish man. Baby, he said, don't let race come between us.
Mm, mm. Wow. Beautiful. And devastating. And the way he breathes shallowly like an asthmatic, the way he says, I can't see what you see. And then the reverie, which is beautiful and poetic and full of color, like the color, the green scrubs, not the police blue, the lethal benediction, the sort of the repetition of the language. And we're sort of held in the suspense of this moment between them that has sent her off there. And then this whole image of dying and looking up at a ceiling designed to dampen sound has so much resonance. And then the idea that this will be the last thing she says to him, or the last time she speaks to him. It's just devastating. I mean, we've been following this story, so it's a devastating moment.
Thank you.
Yeah, beautiful. Ali, if you will unmute, thank you.
Riva and her father have not seen each other for a while, and she has come to Berlin with a mission. And I have this conversation between the father she hasn't seen in a while and herself. Dinner that evening was soup, gristle soup, Riva decided as she tried to chew one of the bits of meat in her bowl. A few chunks of potato and carrot and the ubiquitous turnip. Her father's hand shook as he lifted his spoon to his mouth. Riva watched him barely fill the spoon and use his other hand to help steady it a little. She realized that he was familiar with his tremors. How long had they been going on? How are you, Papa? Well, he answered. You look well, too. He put down his spoon. It's good to see you. It's good to see you, too. She pointed her spoon at his hands. Why are your hands shaking? Her father shrugged. I'm old. We shake. Riva raised her eyebrows but didn't argue. You haven't finished your soup. I've had enough. I'll save this for later. He'd hardly eaten anything. Later? I'm going to work after dinner. Do you often work at night? The factories run round the clock now. We can't keep up. Steel is needed for everything. He smiled, except meals. Ha ha, Papa, Riva said, pulling their old joke from her memory, glad he'd mentioned the factories and wondering how she'd use this to get what she wanted. Papa waved his hand at Riva's soup bowl. Just because I'm full doesn't mean you have to stop eating. Don't worry, I'll finish mine, but you can't be full. Eating, such a bother now. Too much work for too little benefit. But we'll need more rations now there are two of us. I have a ration book. Good. Because of my position, I am offered more rations than others, but I don't think it's fair, so I take only what others get. With you here, perhaps I should take more. No, Papa, just what you think is right. I don't need special privileges either. They were silent until Riva finished her soup. She laid her spoon on the side of her bowl. Maybe I could help you in the factory. You shouldn't work all day and night. Better too much work than too little. Besides, having the factory going all the time helps people. More work for more people. Riva scrunched up her face the way she did as a child. Please, Papa chuckled. We'll see, my liebling, we'll see. That usually meant no.
Colleen, did you write this whole thing right now?
Yeah,
Okay. Is it almost to the end?
yes. That usually meant no when she was a child, but she was grown now and wouldn't forget. She needed to get in that factory. But Papa had risen from the table. She'd have to wait.
I love the way, that she's this sort of their relationship and the ways that their history kind of interweaves in this, and then her concern about his health, which is certainly concerning. And then most intriguingly, her interest in, using the factory to get the information she needs and trying to figure out how to do this. So that part is very exciting. The ubiquitous turnip, that she's familiar with his tremors, that she points her spoon at his hands. Just some great actions there, and her begging please like a child, right? So good, lots going on there, lots of threads, which is as it should be, all right. I know it's very hot. Do you guys want to do breakout rooms and read the piece you didn't get to read aloud? Yeah, all right. I got a thumbs up. Let's do it. It's really good. It's the other side of the coin here. And the computer just puts you all into rooms, and there we go. So let's just do 10 minutes, and then we'll come back and set goals and go take a cold shower. Okay. All right. Here we go. Hmm. righty. We're just waiting and waiting, and everyone else will be back in like 30 seconds.
Well, they will be forced back,
They
actually.
will be. They'll be flown through space, the space-time continuum of Zoom.
Yes, I finally couldn't stand what was behind me, so I put up a photograph of, it's actually of the bay from Cal State East Bay's Hayward campus.
Oh yeah, pretty, really pretty.
Yeah, I took it on a day when we had a sky.
Those are
Well,
good.
it was a big adjustment when I moved out here. I got the hills and the sea back that I'd missed so much. But then there was like no
That
sky.
was
It's blue today, it's blue tomorrow, it's blue today.
Welcome
Okay.
back, everybody.
Alicia, we can finally see you. How lovely.
Did we learn anything about dialogue from this pairing?
I forgot that's about dialogue.
What, Felicia?
Oh, I was thinking about the what Jennifer wrote, and I was saying, oh, I comment on other things other than dialogue, but I think one thing was good is so there was what was happening on the surface of the piece was the dialogue, what they were saying, but what was really happening was the subtext of
Yes.
what was going on there. A funeral with the perhaps the lover of the dead husband is there in a loud dress with a lot of perfume on, and the person observing doesn't know all these details. So you're getting really 3 layers with the dialogue being at the top, you know, of what you hear, right? But then there's what's being seen, and then there's what's not being told yet.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was really excellent.
And it takes a long time to craft that, doesn't it?
I don't know, Jennifer knocked it out.
Well, also, I'm so glad you're bringing this up because subtext is a really wonderful part of dialogue too, right? There's sort of what we're talking about, and then, as Felicia said, sort of what's underneath that, what we're really talking about. And sometimes it can be pretty close to the surface. One of my favorite examples is from, which I've probably talked about to some of you, but is from a movie called Puffy Chair that the Duplass brothers did. And the 2 grown sons are traveling across the country to deliver a puffy chair to their father for his birthday. And one of the brothers is in a very unhappy relationship, and she ends up going with them on this trip. And the other brother falls in love with this woman, you know, in like 2 hours, one afternoon on the, where they stop somewhere, and they decide to get married. And so the brother in the unhappy relationship is standing there with his girlfriend, being the officiant, and he's creating their vows, and he's saying things like, you promise to not to squelch all his dreams and not to belittle everything that matters to him, like he's creating the vows that are just this portrait of his tortured relationship. So subtext isn't always that deeply buried, and it can be really wonderful. Yeah. So thank you. Well, anything else about dialogue? That was so important.
I just think it's the whole issue of crafting it, and when you have students in a class and they say, but that's exactly what was said. And you say to them, yes, I know that, but that's not the point. You have to find the essence of what they said, and you have to put that in there and leave the other stuff out.
Right. Well, like all story, right? There's story with no sort of, there's no small talk. That's really small talk, right? Now there are these wonderful small details and these wonderful small exchanges that resonate and carry a lot of meaning or have a lot of negotiation in them. But that's why we like reading. That's why reading is sometimes more exciting than life.
Oh, always.
Yeah. Anything else? Dialogue. Is there anybody who's not like baking hot right now? Oh, Francis. Wait, are you guys doing air conditioning or something? Are you?
My open window. The bay is right out there.
Oh, good. The natural air conditioning.
Yeah, well, I have air conditioning in my place out here because there's the whole pile of hills between me and the water. So
You're probably 20 degrees warmer than me.
Probably.
I'll look at
I have not gone out and checked.
Berkeley's almost always air conditioned.
Yeah.
Oh, Berkeley is often hot.
Breeze from
Well,
the bay is coming.
I didn't mean to do that.
It's
All
too
right.
I'm on the
hot.
top floor of a four-story building, and all the heat rises at this time of
Oh
day.
God, yes.
So it's like, oh God, yeah.
Well, I once lived on top of a laundromat, and you can imagine what that was with all the hot vents coming up the side of the
That's the
building.
worst. So, what city? What city were you in?
Windsor, Ontario, Canada.
Is that? Does it get hot there?
In the summer.
Oh,
Oh,
yes.
yeah.
I'll never forget shocking a taxi driver in New Orleans. I got in a taxi to go to the convention center or whatever. And he said, oh, yeah, you must not be used to the heat. You're from Michigan. And I said, what's the temperature here today? And he said, 84. And I said, it was 98 when I left home. He practically ran off the road.
God, and over a laundromat. Okay, that makes me feel cooler. I feel cooler already.
Oh, good. I served a purpose this evening. Persia.
Well, let's go ahead and put our goals in. By now, you're old hands at setting goals that work for you, inspire you, feel doable, yet exciting. We didn't do goal checking. Well, we did the chat thing, but I mean the dialogue thing. But if you want to make a note of how it went last time as you look forward to the next time, that might be useful. Right? I said I would do this. I did or didn't, sort of did, and now I'm going to say this. Continue to develop characters, do a timeline. What was were you talking, Francis, about that timeline software?
Yes, yes, I was just gonna, yes, Ian timeline.
Yeah, maybe you'll put that in the chat. And apparently Angie owns it, much to my surprise. But Francis,
Yeah, I finally figured it out.
it's some timeline creation software. So great. All right, Felicia says, I want to finish my internet story. No, keep it going. That's
I
Installment.
know.
yeah. Did you hear? I guess the character is Scottish. Is that right?
Yes.
But I will
One
say
second.
Irish. Did you all hear about the Irish sending funds to the Native American group suffering from COVID because they had been sent funds when they were in a potato famine? Yeah.
Yeah, in the 1800s.
Wow.
The Navajos.
Cool.
That, yeah, the Navajos had sent, like $139 or something back, and helped this Irish town to keep
Yeah.
starving.
Yeah.
And then
I think it was a question of total famine.
Right.
Actually, it's looked upon as the genocide of the Irish by the English, because the population was over 8 million prior to the famine. And when it was over, we were 3.5 million, and the population has never come back.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's an affinity there,
Yes.
and the Irish
Colonized by the British.
Was
yeah.
that?
Well, and then
By the British.
right.
Yes.
Don't mix it. British is one thing, English is another.
The English. It was the
Yes.
English.
Yeah.
The English.
Yeah.
Says the Scot. Right.
You have no idea how many times I confuse that.
The British and the
I'm
English.
constantly asking Scottish.
People
English,
use them interchangeably here,
Kingdom.
but they're not interchangeable at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, now I finally get it. 4 countries and the kingdom. The kingdom that's united. I get it.
Well, don't worry. I probably won't be united much longer. Scots are so damn mad.
Finally.
I got an email from my friend Jimmy in out of Glasgow today, and boy, it was like his whole email was a giant rant.
It's that. Right.
I felt like writing him and say, "Can I borrow this for my novel?"
Lift it up. Well, yeah, this is how we
You should.
Historical times. All right. Aline got Reva out of Berlin. Yes. Despite thrusting her backwards this evening to fill a gap. And now she is stitching together the pieces of her escape, which she hopes to complete before the book in a year retreat, which is virtual. I also want to work on my assignment for June 14th. Excellent. Deadlines are so important. Eleanor wants to start incorporating some of the work she's done in craft exercises into her novel. Wonderful. Revised lightly, joyfully. Ha ha. These are light, joyful times, Eleanor, are they not?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. All right, but yes. What is the thing about go lightly? And if you can't go lightly, go as lightly as you can, right?
Makes me think of Holly Golightly.
It wasn't no. Oh, it's that KPFA woman. There's a woman on KPFA in Berkeley who said that at the end of her show. She would say, go lightly, and if you can't go lightly, go lightly.
Yeah, Stone.
Yeah. It was just and it's floating around my head. That phrase. All right, Jennifer's goal is to write something, however small, about what is happening to us all. I've resisted, but it is necessary now. Bravo. Good.
I think it's too soon for me. I have no idea what's happening to me now.
Well, sometimes it's good to write from the place of not knowing.
Yeah.
It's also interesting to look back and to see what that was like. And I think we learned something about those gaps, those narrative gaps. There is, Rebecca Mackay gave a craft talk. It's through Tin House, but it's in, I think it's the Between the Covers podcast. And it's about, and I feel like we were talking about this in one of my classes, but it's about that gap between, or it's actually really about who you're writing to and who your narrator is writing to. Anyway, she wrote The Great Believers, and it's a good talk. Okay, moving along. Bridget, keep generating scenes and dumping them into their spot in the book and ear manuscript. Fabulous. Francis, really getting into the Aeon timeline, and there it is, or Aeon, yes. It's easy to use, but hard to figure out. Getting a 4-novel outline into it.
Oh God.
Right, that's hard, right?
It's the 4-novel part, Francis.
Yeah.
It's just that if you put in somebody's birth and death, there you are, so you've got all of these little time points, even if you're not writing
right
the first one.
Yeah. Well, fascinating though. Catherine says, I'm not sure what I said last time. Is anybody? But I have accomplished much. Fantastic. I reviewed 6 chapters and I'm working on the New Ordinary World assignment for the book and year class. Fantastic. Yeah. Who needs a goal if you're charging ahead like that? That's fabulous. Well, and so next week is the alternate week with more dialogue. And then we have our finale, the lesson 6. I am teaching this class for summer school, just boom, 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 6 classes in a row. And I think I have like 1 or 2 spots left in that class. If anybody wants to join it, that's in the classes page. It went out in my newsletter. And I'm also, because we don't have the wonderful in-between classes, I think I'm going to do like short whole scene assignments where I'll give you something, and then if people want to have somebody you email it to, like email the scene for that week, so it'll be a little bit of a plus thing. So we'll have the class like it normally is, and then I'll do a whole scene exercise with an optional partner trade thing. That's what I'm thinking. Anyway, if that makes any sense. It probably doesn't. Slightly incoherent here.
Makes sense when we get to doing it.
Yes, exactly. That's the important thing.
Or not.
Or not. Just keep writing. That's the main thing. Just keep writing. Great work, everybody. Stay safe. Register to vote. And power on. Keep writing.
You too, my dear. I don't know how you have time to work on your own stuff.
Well, I get up very, very early before, and everyone else sleeps late. So.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank
great
you,
work,
everyone.
everybody. Thank you.
Nice to see everyone.
Bye-bye. Good to see you.